Happy New Year. And after a little bit of a delay, welcome to the last episode of the first season of A Pint of Scotch, where every sip brings a new perspective and every conversation is a blend of insight and hopefully inspiration. I'm JT Perry, a technology leader who's been professionally leveraging technology since 1995. I hate to say that out loud. Uh, my focus has largely been on achieving business outcomes through transformation, modernization, platforms, all that good fun stuff. My goal is to really drive positive business outcomes, to leverage them to drive technology strategy, really through empowering and growth of people. Right at the end of the day, it's people that make this thing work. I'll be our episode's moderator today, and I'm joined today by two of my close friends and industry leaders, Brian Ross and Gautam Palapa. Welcome again, guys. Gautam, why don't you give a brief intro to our listeners and then hand it over to Brian to do the same?
Sure. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Gautam Palapa. I'm a modernization expert, and I have over 20 years of experience in cloud-native apps, data, DevOps, AI, and so on, similar to JT and Brian. My passion is using technology and empathy to empower enterprises and help them achieve their business outcomes. And I've had the privilege and fortune of moving large workloads to the cloud, consolidating data centers, and really excited for this episode. Brian?
Thank you. So do not let my boyish good looks fool you. I've been in the industry for quite some time as well. I'm now the angry man that shouts at the cloud. That's my professional job title. Alongside that, I'm a therapy officer for anyone going through IT migrations, digital transformations, platform engineering, and everything else in between.
Very cool. So today I want to dive into the effects and outcomes of these large hyperscaler commitments that companies of all size have been making over the last 5+ years or so, right? In the early days of cloud, commentary was Amazon and Google had no idea how to sell enterprises. Obviously, Microsoft has a long pedigree of that. In recent history, we've kind of seen them all figure it out, right? The three hyperscalers, but really these three have made significant dollars through, first of all, impressive technology and capabilities, but offering these for lower costs via long-term commitments, right? I'll commit to spend $30 million a year on insert Google, Azure, AWS, whatever, over 5 years. But really, that's going to bring my price per unit way down, right? And this has been largely a software model since the dawn of time, right? You buy a larger volume, you'll receive a lower per unit cost. The challenge I'm now hearing and consistently hearing from customers, is that they are having trouble taking advantage of these large commitments. I don't believe this is a criticism or reflection of the hyperscalers, although we can talk about that too. This seems to be an outcome of that reflex of, quick, everyone run to the cloud, right? All the Wall Street Journal, HBR articles, all of that stuff, right? But everybody had this default strategy, all the CIOs for the past number of years. What was really missing behind that was a why, like what were the outcomes we were chasing? And then I'd say a real belief of the lift and shift, and then we'll reap the magic, right? Whether that was speed, cost, whatever the case may be. And we've just learned over time that it's simply not that easy. We all today work for different employers and have different sets of customers, but I'd love for us to discuss really three big blocks here. Is this a problem, or is it my small sample size? Are you guys seeing it as well? How did we get here, if so? And then predictions to make us look foolish. What does the future hold? So you all have customers across spectrum of industries and geography. Are you hearing kind of this same concern? Gautam, let's start with you.
Yeah. So that's a really powerful context to start with. And let me just start off by saying it isn't a small sample bias. It's a pervasive problem, at least with my customers. And it's a direct consequence of cloud-first strategy later approach that many of these organizations adapted during the early days of cloud adoption. So if you remember the rush to the cloud, it felt like a gold rush, right? It's a race driven by fear of missing out rather than a clear understanding of the outcomes and consequences. And so organizations were captured by this promise of cost savings and agility. The sales pitch was irresistible at that time. Like I remember it was like, you commit more, and you'll pay less per unit. But there was a kicker in that, right? The thing is, cloud commitments are only valuable if you are equipped to fully utilize them. So $1 million cloud commit is worthless if your organization is running only $100,000 strategy. So it kind of was like that offset is like eat all you want, kind of like an all-purpose buffet of things that you could take and you could consume. And these hyperscalers, they delivered the tools and platforms, but the customers didn't always align with those tools. So they didn't know what they wanted to do. And the way I like to think about it is these hyperscaler commitments, be it $1 million, be it whatever, they're like gym memberships. You could sign up for like 24-hour fitness, or you could go like Equinox or Peloton or whatever. They're like gym memberships. So you signed up with the best of intentions, but you forgot that you actually needed to show up. And that's what's happening right now. We are realizing that we're not utilizing it properly. The costs are going up. The efficiency is dropped. You're doing crazy things like moving everything to the cloud just to make sure that you're having that commit and showing that you're burning it to the board. And the hyperscalers are now evaluating it because they're also businesses and they go over quarterly reports and they have to make sure that it grows. So there's going to be a reconciliation of all these various spends and the commits that are happening. And our customers are feeling that as well. And the sad part is we see this story repeated again and again. We've done it across. I mean, being in technology, it's like almost every 7 years we have the same cycle. We keep doing exactly the same thing. And we're doing it with the AI buzz right now. But that is a topic for a different episode. I don't want to go off on a rant and derail this one. But the short of it is, yes, most of my customers, they're starting to feel the pinch. They're starting to realize that they overcommitted and they don't know how to fill it. So, yeah, they have a super tanker and all they're doing is they're buying enough oil for maybe a fleet of 100 cars and they don't know what to do with the remaining tanks. Brian, what do you think?
Oh, I wish I had a different story. So I've got a couple of rules that I live by, and I've promised that I'll retire from IT as soon as a couple of things happen. They're not difficult. I need to make it through a whole year without hearing about a production outage because of out of disk space. I need to make it through a year without hearing about a production outage because of an expired SSL cert. And I need to meet someone who spent less money on Amazon than they planned. And this beard tells you everything. I've been here for too long, right? And it's not showing any signs of changing. I don't think this is just the cloud as a problem. I had a customer a few years ago, and they were convinced by a certain vendor to buy and stockpile server hardware for their data centers, because if they bought enough of them now, they would get hyperscaler type prices. Spoiler alert, most of those servers went end of life still in their cardboard boxes. And I think this analogy of a gym membership is exactly that. Or you've bought all the weights, you've bought the thing, you've set an entire room, you've built a gym. Good. Right. Going to do anything with it? Probably not. The thing for me is that the move to cloud also meant we were moving away from something. Uh-huh. So rather than address the problem, we decided just to start again somewhere else. And lo and behold, the problem followed us eventually. I saw so many people with early success stories in cloud because their developers were able to move much, much faster. And that's because they weren't following any corporate security standards. And we ended up with open S3 buckets and all sorts, right? And then you add all the governance and you add all the complexity of a growing estate. Because greenfield's fun. Once it gets big and complex, though, less fun. All of a sudden, things slow down. All of a sudden, things cost more. And you end up in a very similar hole. That being said, I am still an advocate for public cloud and private cloud and everything else in between. It has always been and will always be the right tool for the job. I just don't think that many leaders are necessarily equipped to make those decisions when there's a lot of pressure on them from stakeholders, peers, and other management.
So what you said just gave me a huge visual, and I have to share it because it's going to eat in my brain and interfere with other thoughts. It's almost like we had a gas guzzling car, and then we pulled it into an EV charging station, and now we think we're cool. But it's still a gas guzzling car. We've not done anything to it. It's just we have the perception or the facade that, we entered a EV charging station, so we must be cool, right? Okay.
Mixed as well with, not everyone is Facebook.
And also, like, we're making, 7-year commitments, whatever. I pull that number out of the air, and things change, right? Pretty dramatically. I mean, and again, I don't want to fall down the AI rabbit hole, but that is changing, or hearing a lot of discussion, at least. I shouldn't say decisions haven't been made, but, boy, do I need to look at private AI cloud, right? Because I want to keep my data on, or maybe that's a reason to get to the hyperscaler, because I think I need their access to GPUs, right? All of that. And I think we've touched on it a little bit, but let's talk about, how did we get to a point where so many, right, have these industry commitments that they can't achieve, or they can't see the value from, right? We talked about a little bit. The thing I hear about is, boy, maybe I'm even getting close to that commitment, but I thought that commitment was great because I could shut down my data center. But there's still those things, whatever those things are, that I can't get out of the data center. So now I have both, right? Anyway, Brian, I let you go first here, but I know you touched on it a little bit, but how did we get here?
Again, I'm just going to rant for a little bit more. This is what we do. We've seen this many times before. Agile was a brand new way of working that was going to make everything faster. And then we bludgeoned it to look like waterfall. And I bet you probably still see the same thing today. We've got ops teams renaming themselves as DevOps, but they don't write any code. Now we've got a platform engineering. People without reading or understanding the full remit, the socio-technical elements of platform engineering. Well, we've installed Backstage, so that makes us a platform team now, right? So it's not new, and it's very tiring, having seen it many times before. How do we get here? Same story. Change is hard. Change is really hard. Changing technology, not as hard. Spending money, much more fun. So what we end up with is, because change involves people and we're generally not good at that, we end up changing the tools instead. Because if we build a better platform because some other company has great success with it, we're bound to have that great success. Again, not everyone's Facebook. So we copycat and hope that we'll get some cargo cult benefit out of it, rather than really dealing with our own problems and thinking about what we really need to do and what our role in that is. Also, change takes a long time. Whereas you can make a cloud commitment, set a 5-year roadmap, and collect your bonus check because you've done your bit, and then you won't be around by the time the 5 years ends. So I think obviously I'm jaded by all of this because I've been through many customers explaining to me how they were going to migrate everything to cloud, and I had to nod. The long story short is that we need to be much better at understanding that IT has got less and less to do with technology now, and a lot more to do with people and how we interact with one another. I've been on this rant for many times, like microservices, monoliths, SOA, and everything else in between was not about technology. It was about allowing development teams to work better in parallel. Likewise, on the cloud native side, we achieved quite a lot back in the good old days with a single server running Linux and Apache and MySQL. I know it because I ran some. But, the large Kubernetes and everything else on that journey is helpful, but it was all about getting multiple teams to work better together. Kubernetes is not really a container strategy. It's a language to describe what developers want to happen in production, so they don't have to do it themselves. We've been trying to do that for a very long time. So yeah, it's down to our inability to understand the problems that we actually face and to educate ourselves on them.
Awesome. Thoughts?
Sure. So I'm going to add on to Brian. I fully agree with it as well, though I still have a little bit of naive optimism with the hope that, we will actually learn. I only do that because I don't want to go insane and lose my sanity. But I think the reason why we got here is because of a mix of historical context, organizational behavior that Brian touched upon, and misplaced priorities. So, first, I just touched upon it a little. It was the allure to the cloud. It was irresistible. You had early adopters, they were hailed as visionaries, and others scrambled to follow suit because, like, everyone wanted to be Facebook or look at Facebook and say, oh, they're doing it. It's super cool. So we need to do it as well. So that was that. It became the default strategy. Cloud first, if you remember, it was seen as a badge of innovation. But in many cases, it lacked a cohesive business purpose. It became a race. Cloud adoption became a race, and too many companies joined in and started running without actually understanding or knowing what the finish line was or why they were even running in the first place. So that's the first one. The second one that I've talked ad nauseum about is this lift and shift myth that was there, right? Many companies fell for that lift and shift myth. They migrated legacy workload to the cloud without optimizing them for the new environment. So I liken this to having really crappy old furniture and shipping it to a modern house and then wondering why the space doesn't feel functional or efficient or having the right lighting and look with an open concept and all that, right? It's the same old furniture. So this approach, it led to inflated costs, technical debt, minimized realization value. So that was the second one. And third one, I believe what accelerated is that commitments were made without operational readiness. So this usually the focus is on price per unit savings and discounts, but critical questions like, do we have the right skills? Do we have the right processes? Do we have the governance to manage the spend effectively? Do we know what we're doing? Like all these things were skipped. And so people completely lost that focus and trying to ask what exactly they are doing here. So that added to it. And then finally, lack of FinOps maturity. Even today, many organizations, they're not really equipped to track, optimize, or align their cloud spend with business outcomes. It's like owning a Ferrari, but not really learning how to drive. It's got amazing potential. You can look at it. It's super cool, but it has no practical results. So I feel we got here because, and we've all mentioned this in some way, shape, or form, we prioritize technology over strategy. Cloud becomes an end in itself rather than a means to an end. And the shift to value realization, it was missing in the equation. And now we're seeing those after effects. It's blowing up. That's my thought.
I think the agree with what you both said, but then I think there's also a people issue at play, right? As I've done interviews and workshops, especially this past fall, what I was really hearing is we also, if you were talking to developers, right, or architects, and when the rock stars, right, I have to use it. I have to learn it to be able to get my next job, whether my next job is here at whatever institution or at the next company, right? You had something that was working pretty well. Why are you looking at Kubernetes? Well, because I felt like if I didn't, I wouldn't be marketable next. I think there's a CTO view of that. Like, hey, I got to show that I can make the latest, greatest thing, right, work. A CIO view. Maybe I'm a CIO at a small company, and now I want to move to, right, a big name, large company, all the trappings that come with that. I need to be able to prove that I can do this cool thing. I wonder if you could get the job if you just really drove business outcomes, right? And it's easy to say I've been in that role. I've been in the CIO. I brought Kubernetes into an organization very early, so I am very comfortable in my glass house as I'm throwing rocks here. I want to admit that. But it is, right, that human almost survival instinct, I think, comes into play as well. And then, employers, if I want to keep this rock star, well, I've got to let them play with this thing. And then it, right, spreads out from that. Again, there's no evil here. There's no bad here, other than, I think if it's bad, it's what we've already talked about. There wasn't the strategy. We weren't ready for it. We didn't really know the why, other than it was kind of cool. The other thing I'm starting to hear is a lot of predictions about what's next, right? Not only among the three of us, but as I talk about this in, at work and conferences and things like that, we know that these hyperscalers provide a ton of features and scale, right? And capabilities that are important parts of our ecosystem. I think we're also seeing, right, and learning what some of us suspected, but that on-prem data centers will also be a part of the ecosystem. There's a real debate on how big and how material, but they're not zero, right? Look, predictions are a great way to make ourselves look really, really silly months or down the road. But hey, let's do that anyway, right? So I'd like to hear some of yours. I think my short-term one is I think we're about to see a whole lot of what I call cloud refinancing, right? I know I committed to 30 million. I'm not going to be able to get there for a while. So let me, commit to you for 20 years, but add 3 years on the back end of it, right? Something like that. Analogous to, at least here in the US, right? For a while there, refinancing home mortgages almost seemed like a sport. And I wonder if we're going to do that, right? And get a lower payment, but don't look at what you're paying overall, because that's kind of crazy. I also think there's a lot of money about to be spent with consultants, which frankly is going to be good for some of us, but an analyst to identify, right, what is that hybrid strategy? What are the clear goals? What are the clear outcomes? How do I really make this real? AI is going to complicate the hell out of this whole thing. Anyway, I'm rambling. What do you two think? Gotham, let's start with you this time.
Sure. I agree with you. I also feel we're going to head into a wave of refinancing and renegotiations. Cloud contracts are going to get a lot more realistic and a lot less aspirational in my mind. I also predict that we're going to see a resurgence in hybrid and multi-cloud strategy, because the pendulum is now swinging back towards intentional workload displacement. And that's actually exciting for me if we do it right. And I hope that advisors and consultants and analysts who are going to guide these companies help them find the right balance to maximize business value, because that's really important here. I do believe that. I'm going to go a little bit on the medium term and long term, because I like to see how foolish I actually was when I'm predicting this. But I expect 3 trends medium term. The first one is going to be an increased focus on workload repatriation. We're already seeing some companies moving the workloads back to on-prem, not because the cloud failed them, but because they didn't approach the cloud with the right strategy. So I think, and this is where I'm optimistically naive. I honestly feel companies are going to take a step back and try to intentionally move the workloads around. Maybe it's not on-prem, but it's maybe more on the edge computing kind of thing. But they're going to approach this with a better strategy that they've had. Let me put that way. The next one is I definitely believe we're going to see a boom in FinOps and cloud optimization services. We already have a lot of people doing this. I've worked a lot with VMware and Tanzu, which has a FinOps solution. It's very robust, and now Broadcom. And I'm also working with a couple of other companies like Aquila Clouds, which are bringing in AI and FinOps and doing much more of the cloud optimization and providing predictive analytics to customers so that they can make decisions on cloud spend and align it with the clear business goals. I'm going to say that one of the medium-term predictions I have is hyperscalers will adopt and they will offer greater flexibility in their offerings. So more consumption-based and modular pricing, especially as organizations demand more transparency and flexibility. That's something that I think is going to happen, because it's not just the companies who are looking at their cloud strategy and their spend. Hyperscalers themselves are looking at it and seeing how they can still continue to attract their customers and make sure they are on their platform rather than a competitor hyperscaler. So That is something that I would see. And then long term, I honestly believe the winners in this space will be the ones who will master value realization. These are the companies that just don't focus on spend savings costs, but leveraging cloud to drive innovation, differentiation, and competitive advantage. That's my predictions. Brian?
Oh, I wish I was as smart as you. I don't have any set predictions, and I think I don't want to cop out. I'll just rant instead. That's what I'm good at. First and foremost, just want to highlight that public cloud is awesome. I feel like I've ragged on it a little bit, right? But we need to understand that public cloud is awesome. Like, we've achieved some amazing things, and I think it brought sexy back for operations. My fear, though, is all the same drivers that charged us towards public cloud without enough appreciation of the problem space might and could be the same that drive us back in some other direction, be that on-prem, co-location, or something else. That's my biggest fear. And historically, the cycle, the pendulum, IT's got history there. Short term, my honest appraisal is that I think that in terms of cloud commits and spend and FinOps and management, I think it's going to rumble on. Because I think that some changes will happen, but I think some of those that can happen in the background. But the real reason is AI's taken over. People have stopped worrying about this already. They're moved on to the next thing, right? On the plus side is that I think AI has brought, I suppose there's two things. One is it's a big fear of missing out. So everyone is rushing to go build AI things. And that's kind of interesting because many of them are looking at building that on-prem because of the cost of GPUs in public cloud. Kind of interesting. Also, the thing that I'm seeing is a real fear around data. And I think that we've all realized how valuable data can be, and we're trying to hold on to that. And I think that could influence where people want to host things. So whether that's regulation or whether that's personal choice, I'm seeing more companies think more carefully about their data strategy, and that then leads to what their cloud strategy should be. So that is good. Longer term, and, if I pop on my rose-tint glasses for a minute about what the future might look like, I feel encouraged because I think we might be learning some lessons. Right now, I am talking to most customers not about cloud or costs. I'm talking about developer experience, toil, reducing friction, managing developer burnout, recognizing developer burnout, platform engineering, platform as a product, value stream management, team topologies, flow engineering. These are all people things, and that gives me some hope. If we've got IT leaders trying to learn these things and we've got a community supporting and producing material off the back of it, that can only be a good thing. And so I hope that we'll end up at a more measured place than perhaps we've been in the past.
Nice. Awesome. I agree. I think they feel like there's a little bit of a generational change at the leadership, and some of that is me aging myself, frankly. And some things have to be relearned because we stopped doing things like value streams and all of that for a while. And I think, bringing some of that back will help people, right, figure out the why, which is what we kind of did. On that note, I think we should wrap our first season of A Pint of Scotch. I want to take a moment to thank my good friends, Brian and Gotham, for the opportunity for us to have these conversations over the last 10 episodes, and look forward to season 2. So this isn't a goodbye by any stretch. Today's episode, we talked about organizations operating with these significant hyperscaler commitments and the struggles to achieve them. We also kind of took a step back and said, how did we get here, right? We showed why it's really critical to have clear business outcomes, those goals in mind, the people that we've been talking about, and realizing that, hey, let's make sure it's a good technology and, more importantly, business opportunity, and just not something that looked good at that conference I was at. And then we set ourselves up to be laughed at, right? As we We kind of talked about options and kind of how we think it's going to play out. I think we've learned very much just this week with the changes in AI. We're recording this the week that DeepSeek, right, really hit the streets and thrown that curveball. So who knows what curveball will be out there next week. But again, hey, thank you everybody, Brian and Gotham, but also all of you that have listened. Thanks for joining us today and all season. As always, please share your thoughts in social media. Talk about change, right? There's more social medias than you can throw a stick at right now, but I think we're across most of them. Or, of course, in the comment section as well. And remember, whether it's technology, empathetic leadership, or the beverage that you're currently on, it's the depth and flavor of that journey that counts. Always make time to savor the wisdom one sip at a time. Until next time, raise your glasses high and cheers to the stories yet to be told.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you, everyone.